Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. And we have about 20 minutes, so not very long. But we do have two panelists that bring very different parts of the sustainability ecosystem to the table here. And I think we'll do our best to get some really interesting insights from them. So why are we talking about sustainable mobility first, right? I mean, over maybe a century, since the beginning of the 20th century, we've had these internal combustion engine vehicles which were powered by fossil fuels. Over the past decade, 2 decades, we've started seeing this growth in alternate fuels for mobility, primarily powered by electricity today, but increasingly other alternatives like biofuels, hydrogen are all being explored, all of which provide an alternative to the emissions-intensive fossil fuels and provide an alternate pathway for us to go towards more decarbonized transport. Now, just because we are now running on electricity or hydrogen does not make our transport sector entirely clean. We still need a lot of green technology along the way to actually make this happen. And that's what today's conversation seeks to highlight, right? So we don't just want electricity-powered vehicles, we want green electricity-powered vehicles, powered by renewable sources of energy. We don't just want electric vehicle batteries, we want batteries that are energy efficient, that are recycled well, and where the critical minerals for the batteries are not extracted in an inequitable manner. So along the entire value chain, we want to ensure that the transition is not just green, but also equitable and inclusive, so that people who have previously not had the opportunities to be part of a more progressive, higher quality of life also get that chance through this transition. So without further ado, I will get us started on the discussion, and we'll be covering a few things. What is the role of corporates in the transition? What is the role of different forms of funding? How can social innovation and technology actually enable more clean, sustainable mobility? What is the role of EV financing in actually promoting electric vehicles and making that whole ecosystem inclusive? So these are a few questions we'll be looking at, and I will get started with my first question, maybe to Sapna. Hi, Sapna. As the APAC and sustainability head for Alstom and leading their CSR initiatives, you support various initiatives for more sustainable and equitable outcomes. So can you talk about examples of how social innovation can be leveraged for more sustainable mobility?
Thank you so much, Chaitanya, and hello, everyone. I think I'd like to start with, I'm not sure how many people in the room are actually familiar with the company and what we do, so I'll just take a very quick minute to introduce Alstom. So Alstom is a French company. We're headquartered in France and we build mobility solutions, right? We're one of the leaders in the space of sustainable mobility. And you've ridden a metro, and I hope some of you all actually took the Delhi metro to reach the venue today. Then the Delhi metro has been built by us. And likewise, any and every metro in India has something that's been made by Alstom. So right from the coaches to the signaling, to the infrastructure, to the track work, that's everything that the company does, right? Now, I'm lucky to work with a company that I think has sustainability and green tech at the heart of it, because railways, metro systems inherently are clean and good for the environment, right? Now, but does our job stop there? Like, do we build railways and are we done? Not, because if you look at research and data, we know that the adoption of rail as choice for public transport isn't at the levels that we need it to be. If you look at a country like India, most of us still use our personal vehicles to travel. It's not just the convenience, it's also aspirational in a developing country like India to own vehicles, right? So somewhere in terms of our vision, I think our number one advocacy position that we want to see the world get to is wider adoption of public transport, because it's good for the planet, it's good for equity, it's good for economic growth, you know. Sustainable, I don't think sustainable development or inclusive cities can happen without sustainable mobility. Now, coming to the topic that Chaitanya asked me in terms of how are we supporting that through the social innovation CSR route, essentially the company has chosen that we want to try and address all of the areas that exist that actually prohibit the use of public transport, right? Now, when we look at research, much of what comes our way is a lot of last mile connectivity issues that exist. So while there might be a metro connectivity, if I live about 2 kilometers away from a metro station, then just deterrent of traveling in that 2 kilometers will maybe keep me from using the metro. It's just so much more easier to order something else or an Uber or just get into my own vehicle, right? So that's one of the areas we've chosen from the CSR route that we want to try and address. I see a lot of women in this room, and again, similarly, data tells us that a lot of women don't prefer using the metro for safety issues. Also, women's safety issues in the last mile connectivity, like for example, like shared autos and the like, right? You don't want to be like capsuled in between like men traveling that last mile to use a metro. So those are some of the issues that we've chosen to pick up. Where does innovation come in? Pretty much, I think one of the programs we've chosen is with IIM Bangalore through the incubation cell, where we're actually looking at giving seed money and grant money to startups that are working in this space. I think Chaitanya highlighted a lot of issues on electric vehicles, on batteries, on maybe making available today, maybe last mile connectivity solutions exist, but you and I don't know what those solutions are. So aggregators, like who are building technology and apps that can make these solutions available to you. These are the kind of startups that we are looking for who are working in this space to make sustainable mobility more accessible. And we're looking at giving them grant money. So that's one of the areas where CSR can support social innovation, Chaitanya. The other is just creating that shift in the ecosystem and addressing some of these issues by bringing various partners together. And I think we're working with WRI that Chaitanya represents, where we're looking, I think everyone's familiar with Bangalore and the congestion problems. I think, like you read every second day in a newspaper, if you're following Bangalore traffic, you'll hear of congestions, people losing their, missing their flights because they couldn't make it to the airport on time. The metro is expanding in Bangalore, but data tells us almost 75% people don't use the metro because of last mile connectivity issues. So we're working to actually deploy e-rickshaws on some of the routes as last mile connectivity solutions that are actually going to be ridden by women. So, they have a dual purpose. They address your last mile connectivity solution, as well as provide livelihood to women drivers, make women users like you and me feel more safe to use those solutions. We've integrated that with one of our programs, which is completely, I think, answers to how technology can be used for good. One of the startups that came up through an IIM Bangalore program is an app called Metro Ride that basically aggregates all your last mile connectivity solutions for a particular metro route, right? And this program, these auto rickshaws are going to be listed on that platform that people can then choose, right? These are just some areas, Chaitanya, that we're using to use CSR funding for fueling social innovation.
Thank you so much, Sapna. That's a great, I think, beginning on how social innovation can spark solutions to some of the gaps that we still see in sustainable transport today, because as Sapna highlighted very correctly, electrification is only one part of the picture. Ensuring that people can also use sustainable public transport is the other big part of the picture. Now, one key part of this sustainable transport is like she said, last mile connectivity, multimodal transport. If you want to use public transport, you need to have walkable footpaths, you need to have three-wheelers and two-wheelers that are connecting you between your home and your public transport stations. So here I'll turn to Pankaj. Pankaj is the CEO of Mufin Finance, and you're playing a very critical role in financing the clean energy and clean mobility transition. You're also financing a lot of electric three-wheelers, which play a very critical role in multimodal transport. So, given the theme of green technology, can you talk about how you're using technology in your financing decisions to actually make it more inclusive and enable more people to get access to finance that maybe previously didn't have access?
Sure. Thank you, first of all, and good morning, everyone, I would say that. Thank you, Chaitanya, giving this opportunity to talk about it. I think so. I would love to talk a bit what we do and how we are creating that ecosystem, and then talk about technology play that we have. We are currently one of the India's biggest dedicated EV focused financer in the country. We spread across 14 states. We were the one of the early birds who started in 2016. We have funded almost more than 65,000 vehicles so far in our entire journey so far. And we have a current pool of live of around close to more than 45,000 vehicles, electric vehicles that we have funded so far. The whole objective of our organization is to enable green mobility in India. And at the time, the pace, the sector which has picked as EVs. So our entire portfolio is currently green and is entirely EV as of right now. We believe in funding the entire ecosystem. We don't believe in funding only the vehicle. So we fund vehicles, we fund swappable battery, charging stations, we fund swappable charging ports also. So, the whole thought is that whatever is needed to enable last mile logistics in an electric way or e-mobility is something that we are ready to fund across. We have both side of customers. We fund to retail consumer directly. And we also fund to business, where there are running people like fleet operators who are doing us a business on that side of it. When we talk about our retail customers, definitely we are the largest e-rickshaw financiers in the country. We have a portfolio of more than 35,000 e-rickshaw portfolio as of right now, plus approximately close to 50,000 vehicles that we have funded in a e-rickshaw category so far. This entire set of customer change, then when you talk about impact side of it, they are primarily people who have come, they do not have a credit score, they do not have any kind of a banking records. They are very tough to fund. They are non-bankable people. Our 84% of our customer base is non-bankable in e-rickshaw category. They don't have credit scores, no bank accounts, nothing. They're not even using a UPI or something like that, whom we are funding. 11% of our borrowers are women, correct? We have a portfolio which is not only in metro, it is spread across town B, C, Ds. So we do not only fund in Lucknow, Delhi or metro cities or town B. We fund in places like a Chakia, which is next to Varanasi. We would fund a place like a Nevada, which is very away from major hub like Gaya, Patna, Purnia of Patna in Bihar, correct? We spread across yes, definitely the major portfolio is in UP, Bihar, because the last mile connectivity issue is major there, correct? But we are spread across 14 states. We are funding in Assam, we are funding in various other parts of the country. Now, coming on to the real question that how we are using a technology play in this ecosystem. So, probably every vehicle that we fund today, we are fixing an IoT device. Now, this IoT device help us understand and help us calculate his pattern of driving, his economics of driving. And that is something that we are using to calculate his capacity to pay the EMI or not in that particular territory for that particular use case. So, in terms of when it comes to EV funding versus any other different type of funding, the whole thought is that the assessment is not only on the consumer, because in our case, consumer 84% doesn't have a credit score. So it is always linked to territory, use case and product also. And trust me, the 33% risk is on the product, whether the product would be able to last to 2x of the loan tenure or not. Because if it is not, then trust me, for him to buy that asset or not pay for it, the propositions are higher. In terms of economics, what we calculate, any guy we fund in an e-rickshaw is able to take away the cost of owning the vehicle, makes that cost of owning in 7 to 8 months. We do a longer tenure loan as compared to what they make, so that they are able to run their livelihood. So the tenure that we do is around 18 to 24 months. So that's how we have been doing. And using this technological data, we are also building an AI, which would help us predict the EMI collection in advance. Not the, when a loan gets bad, then we identify it. It is at the preemptive stage itself. Okay, this person has paid the EMI last month. He will not be able to pay the EMI next month because he hasn't run X number of kilometers. He has not charged the vehicle, the battery is going to be dead, he is not going to make these 3 basic parameters, because of which he will not be able to pay the EMI. So those kind of technological intervention is something that we are using in green financing.
Thank you so much, Pankaj. And I think it's critical to actually emphasize how important green financing is for a sector like electric mobility, because it's a very risky sector. I'm going to stay with you, Pankaj. I actually have one more question before we come back to Sapna. So financing new technologies is very risky because there's still a technology risk. There's a lot of new companies that are coming in that are making 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers. You don't know how good the quality of the product is. You don't know what the life of a battery is. You don't know whether they're going to find charging on time and whether they're going to run enough kilometers on time to be able to pay their loan. So there is a lot of risk involved. And so financiers that are actually coming in to sort of take that risk on and provide financing play a very important role in ensuring that there is that acceleration in the ecosystem. Now, Pankaj, in order to de-risk some of the risk that is involved in EVs, what is the role of, say, partnerships and collaborations, be it with companies and organizations that are providing catalytic capital through CSR or impact investments, or with OEMs that are having the product and maybe ensuring that they take the onus for the value of the vehicle? What is the role of partnerships here?
So when we talk about, let's take an example of e-rickshaw fund. Apparently, you would be surprised to hear there were almost 800 different manufacturers which are registered and approved by ICAT and ARI for manufacturing of e-rickshaws. And practically, there are less than 100 people who are actually manufacturing it. Rest, everybody is assembling. They are just importing kits from China and assembling it. People who are manufacturing, they understand what is the need of an Indian market. So they are manufacturing the right product which is going to build to last and able to handle the scope of road which is Indian road requires. So that is the first level of difference. You very rightly pointed that there is a high product risk or a technology risk. That is something which comes across in this ecosystem. And by God grace or whatever you can say that, I have been onto the other side of table for almost 3.5 years. I was heading growth for India's one of the largest e-rickshaw manufacturing company. So I have a deep understanding on the product. So that understanding on my product always helps me evaluating the right partner in the ecosystem. That, okay, this kind of product would work. This kind of acceptance of this kind of a product would come from consumers. And those are the shortlisting criteria for us to choose the OEMs that we start working with. We cannot work with all 800 people who have registered as an OEM in an e-rickshaw. We have to work with selected players where they have a proven product and there is a use case which they are solving for it. E-rickshaw also has a multiple use case. It could be a last mile logistics, it could be a passenger movement. So there are different use cases. People are using it for doing as a support service van for electric usages, a lot of maintenance work. It's a very low cost vehicle. People are using it for making ambulances in rural areas because it makes an economics there and it doesn't make an economics to run a vehicle there. So there are multiple use cases which are being used. E-rickshaw is being used as school van, load carriers, multiple. So let's say if we are talking about an e-rick passenger in a city like Lucknow, we would expect that the vehicle should run at least 100 kilometers and should be able to, on a lead acid lithium ion, he should be able to do 80 kilometers. But if a vehicle is running in, let's say, Chakia or let's say Sheikhpura, which is close to Nevada, there the range required would be 120 kilometers because the routes are different, patterns are different, stoppages are different. So everything has to be calculated based on geography and territory. And wherever we see, and also the battery life is degrading. So the lead acid battery comes with a 15-18 months warranty, but it starts degrading after it. So how do we deal with situation if we have a loan which is 24 more old tenor based loan? We have to look at, and if the income pattern in that particular city doesn't allow a customer to pay more than 6,500, we have to do a long tenor loans also. So it is a risky proposition, but selection of this product is one of the most key parameters for us, and assessing that technology. So there are 3 parameters which has helped Mufin on that front. One, or any green financing, would be understanding on the product know-how, technical components and everything. Second is the territory-based assessments patterns, which a lot of financing company does, as well as OEM does it. And the third most important factor is experience. You have funded a certain vehicle, you have seen a pattern, and based on data, you come up with the situation that, oh, this vehicle is not working for this territory or this use case. You are having a higher defaults. So these are the 3 things that we have been able to do it from last 7 years. And that's why we are able to build one of the biggest e-rickshaw financing company in the country. And that's where we are using technology and data more often.
Great. Yeah, I think you've also been highlighting the role of data in your responses, which is very important. And in terms of partnerships, you spoke about OEM partners.
There is one more thing which I wanted to share. In e-rickshaw, OEMs are ready to take even a certain level of risk, and they are ready to give a certain level of assurance that if there is any kind of a default is there, we'll at least help them redeploy this vehicle or sell this vehicle, because the residual value is very low, very, very low.
Sure. So you spoke about a few of the different kinds of partners that are there in the EV ecosystem. Now coming back to Sapna, and zooming out a little bit. So sustainable mobility is one part of the puzzle, but overall we are all of us trying to move towards a net zero economy. We all know that India itself has committed to being net zero by 2070, and a lot of big companies are actually raising the bar on climate action. It's not just been government led, it's actually been industry led in many cases. So from that perspective, how do you see the private sector contributing to the global net zero targets, and what kind of policies and actions is private sector taking to sort of make sure that they play their part of the action?
No, thank you, Chaitanya. Chaitanya, I think, like you rightly said, right, industries are fueling a lot of the change that needs to come about to kind of meet the climate targets now. If you look at Scope 1 emissions today, a lot of industries have kind of announced very ambitious targets, and a lot of those targets to be met needs a higher adoption of renewable energy in our operations, right? I'm the manufacturing, like I work in the manufacturing sector, right? Now we've taken commitments that we need 100% of our energy requirements fueled by renewable. What that does is it creates the need, it creates the demand, it creates the pressure in some ways on the government as well for faster adoption of renewable, right? Because it's all good for me to say in 5 years I want 100% of my renewable, of my operations to be fueled by renewable, but if I don't have that much capacity in the grid, or if I don't have availability of that energy, then how am I going to meet that target, right? So it creates that push and pull, that need and that demand and that supply, right, to make these realities come about, right? So from that sense, I think the private sector has a key role to play. Again, when it comes to Scope 3 emissions, reducing supply chain emissions, I think some of the initiatives that industries are putting out there are showing the way in terms of how it can be done. Let's look at the Amazon and the Flipkarts that have moved their entire deliveries via EVs, right? So it's up to us as industry to identify all of those initiatives that are actually going to lower emissions in our Scope 1 and Scope 3. So I would say, I think, we're a very pivotal role to play as a private sector in that entire ecosystem to be able to meet those targets, right? Yeah. The public sector won't be able to do it alone.
Absolutely. And one thing, I do see a lot of maybe students in the audience. So what I would request all of you to do is really go up and look up Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions. If there's anything you can learn today, I think that's very interesting and very important as part of the climate action. We've been told we don't have time, we're running out. So I'll ask one final, very short, crisp question to both of the panelists. Pankaj, what do you think in the next, say, just in 1 minute, what are the most urgent actions needed maybe in the next 5 years for sustainable mobility to really take off in India?
I think so, from a financing point, plays a very vital role in bringing the rubber meet the road. So I think so, one of the key things is looking at is priority sector lending. So if green financing can be moved on to priority sector lending, especially in case of EV, that is going to give a big boost to this sector. I think so. Second thing aspect is the FAME 2 subsidies and policies. They are instrumental in bringing heavy commercial vehicles on road in an electric form. And I think so they should look at treated differently for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and as compared to four-wheelers and others. They would have to not look at a standard parameter of per kilowatt utilization on that and cappings on that. For cars and larger emission, that is something which is expected. And the third thing which I probably is one of the key things, because all the cells in electric vehicles are coming from China, in India for that matter. I think so setting up a cell manufacturing unit so that India can power its own vehicle train, which could be either a sodium based also, it could be lithium, it could be other new emerging technologies also, could be designed. And these are the three things which can take a very progressive growth in the country. And I think so companies like Tata and Adani's are probably looking at how do we start manufacturing cells in India. So okay. I think so these are the three key points I would like to talk about.
Great, thanks Pankaj. And then same question over to you, Sapna. From your perspective, what are the most urgent actions needed for sustainable mobility in the country?
Chaitanya, I said in the beginning, I think like our passion is to see wider adoption of public transport, and that needs policy support, right? So incentivize more usage of public transport, de-incentivize, vehicles, like today every household has 3-4 cars. Do we really need them, right? Short distance travel by air, I think, there are a lot of policies, like I said, that needs to be put in place to incentivize short distance travel by rail. And I would really like, I think, to see that policy environment around wider adoption of public transport really come to a higher scale of maturity in the country over the next 4 or 5 years.
Thank you. So I think both our panelists highlighted the two key aspects, the public transport aspect and the electrification aspect of how to move forward sustainable mobility. So with that, we close the panel. Thank you.